So Andy doesn't know we're going to do this, but before we get to your questions, we're going to play a little word association game with Andy. So over the last year and a half at A Plus Up, we have learned some things that we've sort of built into imperatives, and it falls under an acronym, and the acronym is GREAT, right? So some of these are terms and not just necessarily words, but grab that mic. Oh, you're already mic'd up. I just want you to react to either the word or the term in the view of next generation learning.
Okay.
Right? Okay, here's the first one. Student growth.
Student growth defined by the broader, richer set of success definitions rather than the important but narrow definition that has been the coin of the realm so far. That to me, that feels like the center of the onion.
Relationships.
Probably more important than anything else. Period.
Empowerment.
Empowerment carries a thick load of double meaning to me, because it's a great word, but it does convey to me a little bit of old think in that most people understand it to say, okay, the teachers in the schools are going to empower the kids. Well, kids come to school with a lot of power on their own, and they don't. We haven't done a good job of organizing schools built to recognize that. And so, I'm not sure. Enable, invite, enlist are better words for me. I have the same issue with the phrase college ready. College and career ready, because that sort of seems to convey that everything up to the moment when you go show up at your first day of college is all about preparation for that moment. And we have a history in this country of 15-year-olds being sea captains, and kids led very powerful and authentic lives before we had invented the word teenager. So there's a lot of good in that we might go back to.
Anytime, anywhere.
Possibly the thing that is going to help trigger the change, because that's what's happening in post-secondary. We do as much work in post-secondary reform as secondary. And the anytime, anywhere explosion that allows learning to be accessible and dynamic, no matter where you are, is going to play a really big role here in the States, and it will play a gigantic role globally in allowing us as a species to maximize all the power that is out there in people that formerly couldn't have access to learning and knowledge.
And last one, technology.
Important as an enabler, but quite a risk, because it's shiny and it's bright, and people get, as we saw in Arizona this week, people confuse the shininess and the brightness for the genuine stuff. So there's a lot to like there, and there's a lot to be careful about there. I see a lot of nodding heads on that point.
Let's go to questions. We've got a couple right here in the center section. Oh, we're going to go over here.
We've only got one mic today.
No, this one's recorded.
How you guys doing? My name is Jeremy Williams. I work for Teach for America. I think I really love the bubble game because it creates a situation where scoring the soccer goal doesn't matter. But we're living in a society in which it really does matter. Standardized tests, standards, TEKS, et cetera, et cetera. How are you guys navigating like going to schools and making it not matter as much? Is it a government thing? Is it a district thing? Like, how are you doing that? Because it's amazing and I love it, but it's hard when you have teachers that are getting pressures to really score the goal.
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you for asking it. And you're right. We're all swimming, in water right now that is kind of rushing this way, and it's trying to make us go that way. Just to really mix our metaphors with your bubble game. But there's action happening there. Just 2 weeks ago, the state of New Hampshire got the first ever statewide waiver from No Child Left Behind accountability rules. And they have created a next-gen accountability system that is oriented around districts and schools being ready to opt in to a new system, state to richer, deeper competency definitions, that they only move to when they feel that they're ready to do so. And there's a period of sort of no harm, no foul while they're figuring that out. There's, I think, a collective understanding that No Child Left Behind, which is one of those examples of a good idea. Let's hold all kids to the same high standards. But then in the ways that it turned out to be implemented, ended up being a perverted version of that idea that really narrowed practice. That it went too far in that direction, and it was sort of shanghaied by the things that we knew how to measure. That became the tail that wagged the dog. So I suspect over the next 2 or 3 years, and especially if Congress can ever figure out how to actually do anything and reenact that law, the new versions of the law that are floating around right now go a lot in that direction. So hang in there, and for now, just, do what you want to do and ask for forgiveness instead of permission. Eventually it will all over.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that a bit. So as most of you know, A+ works in traditional classroom space. Well, we've also launched this innovative school here in the Museum District, A+ Up. And this was a big anxiety for us when we launched A+ Up. Because one of the things that we noticed a lot in traditional space was that teachers were fearful around sort of allowing time to be used by students for self-directed purposes. And we meet up with that a lot. That teachers, Scott, we'd love to do that, but we're going to lose time before these kids have to take the test. And so when we launched A+ Up, that was a big anxiety of mine after 25 years in a traditional school district. I kind of came with that bias. And I will tell you, it is dead wrong. At A+ Up, those kids are showing, if not as much success, probably more success on standardized tests, because we have released self-directed, self-ownership learning.
Yeah.
But, so a question to you is, how do we get traditional systems? Because that's what we're struggling with at A+ right now, is at the principal level, at the classroom teacher level, really forming the courage to allow that to flow back, I would say back into the classroom.
Yeah.
It's not like that's never been in the classroom.
Sure.
What do you think?
Remember that curve that I showed you? At the early adopter part, which is, the innovators were the first 2.5%, the early adopters are the next 10 or 12%. Those are the folks like you who are going to take what the innovators are doing and make it happen themselves. What has to happen before the early majority and the late majority do it is that they start to see an evidence base. And your track record is going to be part of that. The High-Tech High results are part of that. The RAND study that you can all read about on our website of our grantees is part of that. And as these schools mature, there will be, within the next 2 years or so, a strong enough evidence base that, a superintendent or a school board member who gets it, but knows that they need weapons in order to persuade their peers, will be able to find those weapons. And that's what we need in order for the big change to happen.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Next question.
I wanted to ask you, my colleague and I are involved in teacher preparation programs. And I didn't know how involved you are with teacher preparation programs. And we were able to go visit and observe an A-plus school that is incredibly innovative and really works on personalized learning. And I was wondering if you could give advice to a preparation program to prepare our pre-service teachers on how to think innovatively instead of the box. Oh, he's gone. The box that we put our teachers in sometimes concerning standardized testing and things like that.
Yeah, great question. And it came up last night. We had another conversation with another set of people. One of them asked a question like that, and he turned out to be the former dean of education at a local university, I forget which one. And he made a good point afterwards, which is that colleges of education, are sort of being pilloried nationally because they're accused of producing teachers who are only in that traditional box of a model. But he said, and he's right, they're part of the system that they're part of, and they're producers of a product, new teachers, that there's a set of buyers, school districts. And right now the buyers are all saying, we want teachers who look like that box. And so there's a judgment call that schools of education need to make right now on how far they can stretch their preparation strategies so that they're awakening teachers to what is possible. But, he said, we deliberated moving entirely to a teacher preparation program that was about experiential project-based learning. But all of our best district customers said, that's not the kind of teacher that we want. It's not the teaching that we do yet. So I would say the answer for right now is, in order to stay in business, you need to find a way, and teacher ed colleges, generally speaking, need to find a way to stretch that box and help teachers understand the point that Scott just made, that teaching in this way will produce the results that your district is looking for. So nobody's putting a bullet into the idea of the importance of those results, but we're also saying there's a different and better way to help teachers help students get there. So what does that look like? I think it means leaving the colleges themselves and spending as much time as you can, as you've already done, in models like that. Because once teachers see it, once anybody sees it, and you see the level of engagement of the kids, and you see the kind of learning that they're doing, and the documenting that they can show you, you almost can't go back. So seeing is believing.
I didn't have an opportunity to announce this today. I announced it last night, but so some of you know that we launched a second school in partnership with neighborhood centers at Ripley House. And just a couple of weeks ago, neighborhood centers decided to expand that program to add 2 more learning coaches into the incoming 6th grade. So we're really excited about that. But this is our major challenge right now, finding human capital that is able and willing to do this type of work. And we got the same reaction. So we called the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board and we said, we're in a real pickle down here. We want to train and form a new cadre. We call ours learning coaches. And their response was exactly what Andy said. And that was to take the path of least resistance. Don't go through the colleges of education. because they are not going to be open to this type of recreation of teaching and learning. And so their suggestion, and this is where we're headed, is to go through the College of Continuing Education. Much more liberal, much more open, certificate, not necessarily degree. But I think Andy's right. And then the last thing I'm going to say is, this is why it's so, how many HISD folks do we have in the room? Yeah. This is why it is essential that HISD gets the one-to-one laptop right. Because if we can get that established into HISD, those colleges of education, that is the biggest market receiver of teacher talent in the region. And if we can get HISD to push on that, then you'll start to see, I think, colleges of education making a change in terms of their teacher prep programs. Yes, ma'am?
And just one other thing before we move off of that. High Tech High has now become an accredited teacher ed program. And you can learn a lot about it on their site, and they really have created a wholly different model for teacher and leader preparation, so you might check it out. Yeah.
I was just, you kind of alluded to at the very, very beginning when you said about the status of teacher. I mean, I think that, as you can hear, I was educated in Scotland. I went to university in Scotland. I taught there. We have a national teaching council. You're a professional in Scotland as a teacher, just like a doctor, a lawyer. You are registered on a list. There's a status that the teacher is somebody important. I think until you somehow get that happening here, you're always going to have that dilemma. And I find now as a head of school that recruiting enthusiastic, committed teachers is a huge difficulty, because even I have 3 daughters. My middle daughter currently is pursuing all 3 of them are in further education, but the middle one in particular is of interest to me because in her undergrad she was told do teaching as just in case everything else doesn't work out. Do your teaching certificate as a just in case. What message? Now, luckily her mother was in education, so she came home and talked to me about that. But if that's the message that we're giving to kids, that teaching is kind of what you do when you can't do anything else, I think that's sad. And I think that when you said at the beginning with that picture that's up there, teacher, until we can elevate that teacher to somebody who means something in society, we're always going to have these conversations.
Yeah. I think moving towards these designs of schools will help make that happen, because they help put teachers in very different kinds of roles than the ones they've been assigned to in the traditional model. But thank you. Love your accent.
Next question in the back.
Hi, I work with the teacher education program at Texas Southern University, and we are making changes to our College of Education. We are observing alternative educational settings, but one thing that we really have a concern about and what we have to teach our students is that 10 African American teachers were sentenced to 20 years in federal prison, alleging that they changed scores on standardized tests. So we have these real life experiences that we have to teach our students. And then we also have to say, okay, like in the bubble, I felt like the protection in the bubble should be a school, and students can go as far as they possibly can because no one is judging them.
Yeah.
And that's when the learning, they don't have to fear. But now teachers are having to have to fear. It's just unbelievable to me that I have to share that with my students who are wanting to become teachers. They're not going through an alternative teaching ACP program or anything like that, or Teach for America.
Yep.
That's their first love, and then they have to deal with real life experiences like that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're in this just this grinding moment of change and adjustment where people like your students who may have a different vision for the kind of teaching they want to do in the school they want to be part of, but it's hard to find those kinds of schools. They're not on every street corner. The ones that are on every street corner look more like last year's schools. But you're building some revolutionaries there, so keep at it and tell them, this doesn't have to take generations. This feels like a change that could happen in the next 5 to 8 to 10 years, I think, because that's the way change happens these days.
Yeah, so people over in the office think that I'm making this too simple and that it's way more complicated. But I was telling Andy, walking over from Asia Society to our base space yesterday, like to me, it's real simple. You find an adult that wants to coach kids toward high amounts of learning. You find families who want to connect with that adult coach, and then you find space for that interaction to happen. Simple, right? The challenge is that is a very different system than what we have currently in sort of our traditional teaching and learning places that we call public school districts.
And so I'll suggest that one way to understand what's at the root of the big difference is the restoration of trust into the system. We've been part of a system that has really been organized around mitigating risk. Mitigating risk that a principal will hire his brother-in-law as a teacher, so there's protection. So now they suddenly can't really hire the staff they want. And mitigating risk that any child will be left behind. So we're going to teach, right to what's been determined by policymakers as an acceptable minimum. But every kid who needs to develop the much broader, richer, deeper set doesn't do so because we've pitched everything around that particular. So, it's not just about schools. This is really about our whole society. We have to figure out how to accept, that there's an element of risk in doing anything important, and bad things will happen. But we have to have enough convictions about the model and the goal in order to withstand that exception when it happens and not throw everything out when it does.
My name is Jason Oliver, and I think the previous question was especially important in talking about the types of reform conversations that we're having and who receives the benefit and advocacy as a result of those conversations. And I heard you speaking about the Arizona State University, the GSV conference, which is very well known even in the short time that it's been around.
Yeah.
But if the conversations there are really, shiny, and less of what we need to be seeing, then what are the types of reform conversations that we should be seeing? How should we as community members be advocating for those types of conversations?
Yeah, neither of us want to completely indict the GSV session because there's a lot of good conversation there. It's just that there's also a lot of zaniness around the latest, greatest, cool out technology innovation. I think the most important place to keep coming back to and to start all the conversations that we have here is about understanding that richer, deeper definition of success for kids. We're not, the public school system that we have was perfectly designed for the service it was designed to provide. But that was for a society that is now in our rearview mirror, and the new one has to reflect the society that we live in right now, and that involves levels of engagement and understanding about how to be a lifelong learner, how to be a collaborative partner with others, and all of those 21st century skills. And there's no one way to help kids get to that place. In fact, there are different ways for different kids. So we could get into all kinds of arguments that won't lead to anything if we get too swiftly into the discussion about the practice of it. That I think we need to let people figure out. If we can help people just understand the goal set, that it's hard to argue against that, you know. But it still hasn't become the sort of guiding light that everyone collects around. So if your question was designed to say, what can we all leave here today and make sure we take with us in our, you know, backpack of empowerment for how we're going to be part of this movement, I would suggest that that's the place to start. And you can read a lot more on our site and others. There's a great website, studentsatthecenter.org, that discusses this, you know, richer, deeper goal set. That's where I would go. It's a good question. Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question about post-secondary education. So you guys a number of times today have talked about how the K-12 public education model is sort of focused on a society in the rearview mirror, so to speak, factory age. So the university system is really, from the Middle Ages, sage on the stage, traditional learning entirely. So is there a worry as we go down this sort of next generation path, as you know, very focused on untraditional, innovative thinking, that these kids will get to the university and be very overwhelmed by how traditional universities are, and that really creates a conflict of getting kids to and through college?
Yeah, you're all asking really, really good questions, and thank you for that one. So the good news there is that kids who have that worry that they're going to encounter a teaching model and a learning model that they have left behind themselves, you know, now are starting to have access to lots of different post-secondary models. Post-secondary is going to see this change happen in some ways, ironically, since the model does go back to the Middle Ages, perhaps quicker than K-12, because the central business model is exploding in higher ed, because customers can vote with their feet, and they are. You know, the percentage of college course-taking students that are at four-year residential colleges is now the distinct minimum. I mean, minority.
And there's no compulsory attendance.
Yeah, right. So, you know, we fund a bunch of new models on the post-secondary side too. College for America out of Southern New Hampshire, Northern Arizona, and others that are now purely competency-based, personalized, blended kinds of programs. So people can, you know, in College for America, you pay $2,250 for a 6-month subscription to all the courses that they offer within your degree program. And they have some students who are completing a 2-year associate's degree within 2 or 3 months, because they just really, you know, they really work at it, and they're bringing a lot of prior knowledge that they can show. So yes, that issue is there, and there will be some kids emerging from high school who land on a traditional campus and say, what up? You know, this is not what I expected. But those that have their eyes wide open and are going to be more selective about it than that, they're going to be an interesting pressure point on higher ed, because, you know, they're the demand side. They're going to say, I'm not going to choose that. I'm going to choose this. So, thanks.
This is going to be the last question.
I just want to get your take on the 20% time and genius hour movement. Do you think that's a step in the right direction, or is it almost detrimental to say, here's regular school and then here's the part where you get to do what you want?
I was looking for you and I couldn't see you, so give me your question again.
Just wanted to get your take on the 20% time and genius hour movement, and is that a step in the right direction, or is it detrimental to separate that from real school?
So is that outside of school? Genius hour?
Oh, no, sorry. So teachers will dedicate like a certain hour each week or 20% of the time where kids get to work on their own projects, but it's completely separate from like what they're learning.
Oh,
in
I
school.
see. Yeah. Well, there are examples of schools where they've used something like that as a Trojan horse, to, really, everybody starts to see how engaged the kids are, and that it does contribute in ways you can actually see to their core knowledge, core learning. I think as you heard me say with that triangle, I think this is awfully hard to move towards in increments, though, because it's such a set of fundamental changes, and when you try to move in increments, you face a different set of constituencies and blowback every step of the way, and it's just very hard to do that. So I'm all for those experiments happening. I think it's good for more people to be exposed to that kind of learning. But I think the real change will come from schools and districts, all holding hands and making a bigger leap at once than those kinds of small steps.
And that's a big question. Can we do this inside of existing systems? If we can do that, it'll happen fast.
Yeah.
If we can't,
Yeah.
it's going to be a slow march. Yeah. Let's thank Andy Calkins.
Thank you all. Great questions.
We want to thank all of you and spread the word. We'll be back during the 2015-16 academic year with 3 or 4, we haven't decided yet, speaker series opportunities. Have a great summer, and we'll see you, if not before,
Keep fighting the good
in
fight.
the fall. Thanks.